Interpersonal Communication Project, Latanya Butts, HSER 508, Liberty University Online, October 8th, 2012. Next slide. Introduction. What is interpersonal communication? Listening. Identification of overarching goals. Definition of enlarging the conversation. Background and behavior blend. Acknowledging potential barriers. Identifying, providing solutions to noise pollutions that may be external and internal. My plan of action, the summary, and the references will be provided on the very last slide. Next slide. What is interpersonal communication? Listening. Stewart defines interpersonal communication as the kind of communication that happens when people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. Burley Allen defines listening as taking in information from speakers, other people, or ourselves while remaining non-judgmental and empathetic, acknowledging the talker in a way that invites the communication to continue, and providing limited but encouraging input to the talker's response, carrying the person's idea one step further. Okay, now, next slide. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the identification of my overarching goals. While I have many, I wanted to focus on the two that was very important to me. The first is to be open with other persons by disclosing myself to them, sharing my ideas, feelings, and reactions to the present situation, and letting them know who I am as a person. Next, the second is recognizing my emotions and other people's emotions, accepting my emotions and theirs, and finding creative ways to act on them. Next slide. Enlarging the conversation. You know, we all have our own meaning and definitions of enlarging the conversation. But to me, to enlarge the conversation is to communicate outside of your feelings, your emotions, your beliefs and views, while listening beyond what is being said, looking beyond the person that is there saying it to you, and responding in a way that is beneficial and respectful to the engaged parties. And when I say looking beyond that person, I mean as far as that person's background, their culture, their views, their religion. You know, you want to enlarge the conversation by going beyond what you believe and beyond of what you are accustomed to. Next slide. My background and behavior blend. While I can say this was one of the most fun discoveries of myself during this course. Now, according to my personality type, as this is me, I am submissive, sweet, dependable, soft, security orientated, faithful, and flexible. Now, my CIS, this is expected of me: inspiring, calculating, popular, sensitive, competent, and kind. Now, how does these things influence my conversation? Well, positively, as the listener, I am nurturing, non-judgmental, and always want the talker to walk away with some form of relief or understanding. Negatively, as the listener, I do not state my true feelings at all, because I do not want to offend the listener or disclose things about me that are not expected. You know, while they are expecting me to be sensitive, competent, and kind, you know, a lot of times if I truly state how I feel, then what is expected of me is not going to take place. The next slide. potential barriers. And these are the two that I have to acknowledge. While I can say there could have been maybe 10 slides on my potential barriers alone, the two that I really want to focus on is hearing what I want to hear. Now, how am I going to improve that barrier? Well, I'm going to restate the question or comment that was made during the conversation while gently interrupting, asking for clarification. You know, I want to be heard, so why would I expect that the other person doesn't feel the same way? So, ignoring the person, going in and out of the conversation, only wanting to hear the good parts of the conversation, that is unfair. That's very unfair to the talker. And listening with my emotions, wow. How am I going to improve on that? Well, I'm going to put the talker feelings into my words. I want to walk in the shoes of the talker. Not accuse the talker of having certain feelings. They are entitled, people are entitled to feel how they feel, but my concern from here on out is how am I going to, make them feel a little better about how they are feeling. If it's, down, or if they're feeling good, how we're going to keep that going. So refrain from shutting down due to past experiences. If I've heard it before, if it's repetitive, if I had this conversation somewhere in my lifetime, I don't want to hear it again and I tend to shut down. So I need to refrain from doing that. So those are my two barriers that I am acknowledging: hearing what I want to hear, listening with my emotions, praying that I can overcome these things, these two. Now, next slide. Identifying noise pollution. Noise pollution can be defined as distractions, barriers that inhibit us internally and or externally from engaging in effective listening and communication. Now, some internal pollutions, just to name a few: daydreaming, boredom, fatigue. External, our surroundings, the loud noises, room temperatures, interruptions, phone calls. Now, there are some solutions to the pollutions. Now, what are they? You can pray and meditate before engaging in conversation. Plan a set time and a quiet place to meet. Turn off all electronics. I tend to have some intense conversations with the television on, and I'm looking at the television and it's like, did you hear what I said? And it's like, yeah, I heard what you said. Well, what did I say? I really didn't hear, and that's kind of being rude. You want to stay on topic. Stay on topic, because a lot of times when you go off a topic, you tend to go into some places that you don't want to go, and that could, take the conversation into a negative place. You want to take turns listening and speaking. So you don't want to dominate the conversation. Sometimes if you're speaking with someone, and that this person dominates the conversation, or you tend to dominate the conversation, you may want to take a little timer and turn that timer on. And hey, my turn, ding, 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 your turn. Okay, engage in positive body language while talking and listening. That will make, people feel better when you're giving eye contact, you're nodding your head, you're smiling. That will take things into a positive situation instead of, eye rolling, eye popping, neck rolling, lip smacking, throwing your hands up in the air. So again, if you're trying to find a solution to the pollution, you want to make sure you're doing a lot of positive things. And the last thing is take notes and write down important key points. This will lead to less interrupting and wanting to have those quick rebuttals. So, I plan on having that pen and pad and taking the notes down. And again, This goes back to not hearing what I want to hear. You said A, B, C, D. Did you mean D, E, F, G? Next slide. My plan of action. Well, my plan of action, these are the on the top of my list. To self-disclose in present situations. Exhale more in the present situation. Upon reading, I learned when you self-disclose, it doesn't have to be things in your past. It can be things, right there in the present situation, making appropriate self disclosures. Be open. I want to be more open in order to build good relationships. So, listening to other people's disclosures in an accepting way. We want to be accepted in our conversations and in our lives, but, we tend to not want to accept what the other party is disclosing or putting out. I want to speak and express myself with clarity and power. I want to be clear on what I'm saying, but I want to say it with conviction. To know this is how I feel, this is what I mean. And also to listen deep, because everyone, they don't know how to express themselves. So you have to listen deep. And I learned that when I read Dr. Peterson's book about the couple that was fighting. And she was saying, you could have called, and she was really upset. But if her husband would have listened really deep to her, he would have heard, you know what, my wife is worried about me. She loves me. She cares about me. So this is one of the reasons she's hollering and she's chewing me out. So we have to learn, I want to learn how to listen deep, and also to use my emotions to build better relationships. Because, again, from my readings, your emotions can build or they can destroy. And I want to take those emotions and I want to put them in a positive, creative atmosphere and acknowledge my ignorance. I don't know everything. Acknowledge that I was not listening to you. Acknowledge that I don't understand how you feel. And by doing these things, I believe that I can enlarge the conversation as well, and to listen on level one and place myself in the talker's position. Being an empathetic listener is very important, because you can miss out on some things, and those things that you miss out on could possibly have me having some regrets. And I don't want to walk away with having any regrets from any meaningful conversations that I am engaging myself in. And that's in my professional life, my family life, my social life, etc. Next slide. Summary. We lack skills as listeners for many reasons. Some personal, some more or less universal. They have to do with childhood experiences, formal training, psychological limitations, and socialized attitudes. Culture is present in the communication of all individuals. A basic premise of social approaches to studying communication is that theories of interpersonal communication and personal relationships are reflectly defined, socially constructed, and historically situated. My interpersonal communication skills are important in my family, faith, professional, and social life, in that order. And God bless. And that is the end of my interpersonal communication project. What a great course.